I'm sure a lot of you are fans of the Netflix series Stranger Things, which, by the way, I'm only in season 2 of, so don't put any clues or teasers in it. But I think that Stranger Things affords a metaphor for the way race relations are perceived in America, and I don't think that the perception cuts across racial lines. I think that there are some people who believe that there is no such thing as racism, that there is total equality in America, and then there's other people who live in this alternate universe where racism dominates everything. There's no way to escape it, and we're going to essentially live with these conflicts for all eternity. And the fact of the matter is that there should be realities between that. You have to acknowledge that things do change. There are issues that are much better today than they were in I think it was in 1954 when Brown versus Board was ruled on by the Supreme Court. So a lot's changed since then, and then there's other things that haven't changed. And if you are an integrationist, which is today steadily becoming a more controversial position, an integrationist, remember, is somebody who believes that you should have people of different races interacting in the same environment as opposed to segregating it. So I would say that the real issue with the country, the reason that there is a such thing as this upside down perception, which is, I would say it's just as bad as believing that there is no racism, to believe that there is infinite racism and there's no way to actually live through this because it's so oppressive, is that these people are really content to show that they don't really want people to be a part of their lives. They just want to portray themselves as these eternal martyrs, right? We talk about victimhood. I just discussed yesterday, if you missed it, a book that I think is one of the most important books of the past 20 to 30 years called Losing the Race. And here is a Twitter thread that I could not resist talking about a little. Let me make it a bit larger so some of you can read it. It says, "We must have a conversation about how white women show up in spaces, both professional and personal. It's amazing how white womanhood is treated as innocence when it has caused so much harm and violence to black and brown people." And then he continues. This is a 6-tweet thread. "There is no innocence in white womanhood except, caps, maybe 2 white men." And that isn't saying much. Next tweet, "I think all about all the white women who have gotten black men killed. I historically think about all the white women who lied on being sexually assaulted by black men, which is hella complicated and discomforting. I think of white women who steal black women's writings." Next tweet, "I think of the white women who raise racist white sons. I think of the white women who blame their racist white husbands despite them being married. I think of the white women who didn't care about abortion restrictions until their bodies were also under attack. I think of the 53% who easily voted for Trump. I think of the white women who believe they champion issues for people of color until their opinion is challenged. White women can be just as dangerous as white men, and that must be interrogated." And before someone even begins to think they're immune, I, emphasis, also think of the progressive white women who show you they aren't progressive the moment we discuss racial justice. I think he says a lot there, and I think the second to last tweet really shows how awful his thinking is. He says, "I think of the white women who believe they champion issues for people of color until their opinion is challenged." I'm not sure quite what that means. So he says, well, they champion issues for people of color until their opinion is challenged. Look, people have the right to defend their opinion. It doesn't matter whether you are a black person. It doesn't matter if you're a Russian. It doesn't matter if you are German. Okay? If you're white American, whatever. Having an opinion and defending it does not mean that you cannot be a champion for issues for people of color. And this is really the issue that is bringing down the conversation in America. Now, you might say, well, who cares what this guy thinks? What does it matter? Well, it's funny. Maybe it doesn't matter. Okay? But you can see here he posts where he has been published, apparently. The Washington Post, the Atlantic, the Advocate, the Center for American Progress, very influential. Think Progress, also pretty well read in left-wing spaces. Metro Weekly, I'm not sure if I've ever read Metro Weekly, but I think I've heard of it. HuffPost, Black Voices. Then the Griot, Color Lines, Roll Reboot, Ebony, Hello Beautiful, and HuffPost Queer Voices, because he's gay apparently.
Gay!
And in his Twitter profile, he actually brags about having bylines with The Root, MTV News, and Think Progress. So people like this, people who believe that other people of other races don't necessarily have to be given any legitimacy, their opinions can just be disregarded, they can have bylines in major publications, whether it's the Post, whether it's the Center for American Progress is a very influential organization. This is the reality here. And let's read his bio real quick. He calls himself Black Queer Feminist. But apparently he's not a feminist for white women for whatever reason. And I'm not look, if I was to say something like him, I would be honest. I would say I'm not a feminist at all. And I'm not a feminist at all. I'm an individualist. Right? I support things that I believe in, not in crap that other people have written down for me, unless it's something that I've accepted. And then he goes through here this exhaustive personal whatever about how he came out and whatever.
We bring in the studio this morning one of the gay rights activists, Mr. Should I call you Mr.? Pepe Julian Onzima. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for
Good morning.
Morning.
Why are you gay?
Who says I'm gay?
You are gay.
I don't care. Okay, you can do whatever the hell you want, buddy. But this does not make you an accomplished person that can tell other people to shut up. I am fine. I am fine with you supporting, your cause of what, HIV, for example. I think it's true. Whatever the reason that you contract HIV, I don't think that we should accept that people waste away with a terminal illness. The blame isn't really the issue. I think that finding a cure for AIDS is certainly something that should be important for all of humanity. Just like dealing with any other diseases, cancer has affected my family. Diabetes has affected my family. So obviously people have, relatives that have suffered from AIDS and things like that. But he says, currently Preston is a policy research analyst for the Center for Public Health and Gender Equity, or Change, where he provides ongoing in-depth analysis of new data, policies, and programs within and across sexual and reproductive health and rights, including HIV, AIDS, maternal health, family planning, gender-based violence, and human rights. Prior to joining Change, Preston was a judicial law clerk to Magistrate Judge S. Pamela Gray and Errol R. Arthur at the D.C. Superior Court, and was an analyst for LGBT and racial justice issues at the Center for American Progress in Washington, D.C. At CAP, he published over 15 columns on workplace discrimination, health, the school-to-prison pipeline, and social commentary on hot-button issues. In 2014, he co-authored a groundbreaking report, Beyond Bullying, How Hostile School Climate Represents or Perpetuates the School-to-Prison Pipeline for LGBT Youth. And I think he used to be, so apparently he went to American University, and he has a law degree. So what are the topics that he blogs about? This is what's so interesting. This is what's so interesting. We should all be worried about how we're discussing Usher and herpes. And it says, for centuries, black people have had our bodies exploited, demonized, and then commodified for pecuniary gain. Because of this, I must be upfront in the beginning. Jokes about Usher, sexually transmitted infections, number of partners, and sexual intercourse are moments we should not take lightly and is not a laughing matter. Living with herpes can... Look, I'm not going to keep reading this. Jokes about herpes and Usher are extremely funny. Okay, they are incredibly amusing because herpes is pretty funny. When I remember I was in the army. This is a long time ago. And I was waiting in line for lunch. And there was a lad in front of me, another soldier. And he saw, I think the woman who was, I think it was at lunch. It was somewhere where we were waiting in line. And the clerk, it wasn't at lunch. We were waiting in line, I think maybe at some sort of, might have been at the doctor's office. And the clerk at the doctor's office was this girl, this female soldier. Okay, sorry, I don't want to diminish the maturity of the soldier that was with us, this comrade in arms, this lady. So she was sitting there and she was super bored, and this other soldier actually said, I really like your piercing, because it looked like she had a piercing above her lip, and she said, that's not piercing, it's herpes. And the look on the guy's face, it was like, oh shit. Because he was going to hit on her. And the first thing he lights up on is trying to compliment her piercing, which turns out was an STD. That was great. It was amazing. Amazing. These types of things are the moments we should cherish in life, even to the final pulse of our blood as we slip away into an eternity of God knows what. And I don't want this fraud to take that away from us just because he thinks that Usher can take a few jokes about herpes. Here's another one. If black gay men on TV were all masculine, quote, professionals, would we care about diversity? And it says, on modern day reality television shows, audiences often bear witness to stereotypical, one-dimensional representations of black queer men. From the iconic Miss J. Alexander on America's Next Top Model to the frequent appearances on Real Housewives of Atlanta and even Love and Hip Hop, we have often seen narrow depictions of the black male queer experience, divas applying makeup, giving someone a blowout, or teaching young women how to model.
Hated it.
And then he goes and this is like more this is like, I would say, Tim Pool said something a couple days ago talking about how if the world, now I used a Stranger Things analogy, he used in that case an analogy to the Hunger Games. There was the Capitol District in the Hunger Games, and that stupid scene where they're in the Capitol, you have these morons, this extremely garish, colorful type of fashion that only some types of people can actually relate to. See, not on Pinterest. Damn it. I'm not signing up for Pinterest again. Fuck off. So you see some of this before the stupid pop-up comes back. Yeah, this is the type of world these idiots live in, and they expect. So then they wonder why nobody can really feel for their plight. Well, we can't feel for your plight because we're looking at you wearing a bunch of ridiculous outfits that make you look like a flamingo. Okay, I can relate to other humans because I can relate to people with humanity. It's a little more difficult to relate to flamingos because I've never actually had a conversation with a flamingo. And no, if you're asking, I've never tried to drop acid in order to do so. Here's another one. From the Breakfast Club to the White House, transphobia takes center stage. And it says here, from the corners of hip-hop to the nation's capital, Trans lives are on display in a violent intersection of politics and pop culture. During the same week, President Trump announced a military ban on transgender servicemen and women. Popular radio show The Breakfast Club has yet again found itself in hot water after guest Lil Duval, a low-budget comedian, joked about trans advocate and trailblazer Janet Mock and killing trans women. His statements, which are just as laughable as his failed career, led hashtag boycott Breakfast Club, fueled by the black trans community, which also had Duval as one of the trending hashtags throughout the weekend. Trans violence is no laughing matter. The fact of the matter is that Preston Mitchum, this dude, he should know that the Breakfast Club is itself, the opinions on it are transphobic. And yet people believe nowadays that if you go on the Breakfast Club, it's the best way to reach most black Americans, right or wrong, right? We did, I think, a video breaking down on Sunday the idiocy of the show's main host, Charlemagne, and how he's just a complete moron. Either he's a moron or he's just incredibly corrupt because of the way that he's defending Kamala Harris. But to his credit, he's created a show that's so popular and trend-setting in the black community that every Democratic candidate who wants to be taken seriously makes the pilgrimage to his show and gets made fun of for the ridiculous questions that they have to answer from this total fraud, Charlemagne. I call him Charlatan the Fraud. So, and then there's one more thing here. It says, public service announcement, Black Pride is for black people only. If you reside in the nation's capital and at the end of every May don't notice thousands of black LGBTQ people descend from the gay clouds in their fiercest outfits to slay the weekend away, then you may be living under a rock. To be sure, Memorial Day weekend is certainly when we honor those who have served and lost their lives for U.S. military, often known for unnecessary and violent interventions. On that day, I dedicate much of that time giving honor specifically to black people who fought and died in the name of freedom for a country that never wanted to access it. The same weekend, however, is also Washington, D.C.'s Black Pride, so the sea of melanin is an embarrassment of riches. So this is a racial and gender and sexuality identitarian, and yet he gets all of this time. He gets so much in the world, so much to feel blessed with, and yet he feels that he's in the upside down, right? You see him, he's published in all of these marquee journals because of his his apparent feeling that he's being oppressed, and yet for some reason he finds it necessary to tell people, how dare you object to Usher having herpes. So that's about it. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also subscribe to me on Minds.com as well as on BitChute, and donate to me on Subscribestar. All those are at Chef Leopard for the for the handle, and same thing on Twitter, although Twitter sucks, and then on Gab at Starscream85. Please add me on Gab because I think it's the most fun, and that's about it.
Inside my future eye, what I see just makes me cry.